Dear friends, good evening. Thank you for joining us in this very special day, Christmas Eve of the year 2022. Every year, the ICQ instructors have continued the tradition started by Master Samael Aun Weor. And at this time of the year, the ICQ instructors come together and they release an annual Christmas message. These messages, they continue not only with the tradition of the master, but they continue emphasizing on 13 specific fundamentals of Gnostic wisdom. Each one of these writings contains all the necessary doctrine from the master, and they are very specific on the procedures to eliminate and comprehend the ego, on how is it that we can work with our internal trainer, how is it that we can make the most of our circumstances, etc. And this year, what we would like to offer you is this Christmas message titled The Mysteries of the Dream State. All of these messages, they are generated as an indication from questions and longings of students, and certainly by the direction of the innermost. And what we would like to do is share with you as much as we possibly can for the next 60 minutes or so on the contents of these writings. And we will have the book for you translated and available within the next couple of weeks. So to start, when it comes to this topic of dreams and the mysteries of the dream state, looking into the writings of Apostle Matthew, he states, "And after 6 days, Jesus took Peter and James and John his brother and brought them up into a high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his clothes were white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then answered Peter and said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here." Every time that we see writings like these where Jesus is taking a group of people, whether the apostles or the many followers that were with him, to a mountain, these are all indications that these are experiences taking place within the astral plane. It is here, in this particular event, where Jesus helps these masters unfold and brings them with him to share some profound wisdom, and thus the words of Peter. So every time we happen to be in the sacred scriptures and we see the symbol of the mountain, give that a little bit more context and realize that it is explaining of a very beautiful astral experience. Now, in that very same light, all of the temples of wisdom that we find across the world today, to our eyes in ruins and beaten by the elements, these are all temples that continue to exist within the astral plane. And the beauty is that all of these sacred locations are within reach to anyone who is seeking to awaken their consciousness. They may appear like that to us because that is what has been left within this plane of substance, but they are still active precincts within the astral plane where rituals, ceremonies, and teachings are still being offered. And every night, we have the opportunity to drink from this inexhaustible spring of wisdom. All we must do is learn to unfold in our astral body. And to speak about astral bodies, it is prudent that we then speak about 7 worlds and the bodies that corresponds to each one of those dimensions. Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher, author of the book, The Critique of the Pure Reason, he stated, "We know not this thing as it is in itself, but only its appearances." Perhaps you may have heard us say about this, we can see the appearance of the thing, but not the thing itself. And this is exactly what he means. We are looking at something here with our senses within the physical plane, and even though we realize that we are in a 3-dimensional realm, our eyes can only perceive things in 2 dimensions with effects of lights and shadows. But here in this physical realm, we can appreciate the vehicle of things, this dense manifestation of all things, and beyond that, there are many other attributes that we have the opportunity to go in and perceive. Here in the image, we're sharing with you a representation of what is the Kabbalistic tree of life. For those of you who have not seen it before, notice that it is made up of 10 spheres. Each one of those 10 spheres is a manifestation of creation. And we happen to be in this bottom sphere of the tree that is known as the realm of substance. This is the physical plane. This physical realm in which we exist, well, it is called three-dimensional because we know that we have perceptions of height and width and depth. But the interesting thing about this particular plane is that this is a place for a humanity that has lost its interest in all matters spirit. We know this because sometimes as we start a conversation that carries some kind of spiritual flavor, many people seem to sometimes feel uncomfortable and choose subjects, roll their eyes, perhaps even walk away. And thus we find all ourselves here because at some point we made a mistake and we lost that interest in spirit. And while we're here, because it is our five senses what have become our primary source of receiving information, well, the reality that we have created is based only on the subjective perceptions from all of these senses. And when we look at the bigger picture of things, this world is so small compared to the vastness of creation that we have then come to crystallize a reality that is not only perceived by the subjectiveness of the senses, but that is limited to this minuscule fragment of creation. And even under those circumstances, we tend to believe that we are so superior and so magnificent. It is because of these attitudes and fixed ideas, all of these mental concepts that we have created about the way that life is or should be, that this particular realm has become a filter for the souls. And as a filter, well, those, if we may say, heavier souls, well, they will continue to remain here until they can selectively choose to make a change and move on. But beyond this particular physical plane, it would be this plane would be completely useless if it did not have a source of vitality. And we know that we have the physical plane, and embedded with it, perfectly superimposed, is a vital or ethereal plane. We know that we are in a physical plane that is the third dimension, and the vital or ethereal plane is the fourth dimension of nature. This is that space that Einstein referred to as the hyperspace. But just to make sure, because hyperspace may invite images in our mind that are related to space travel and what we have seen in some movies, we need to clarify that by stating that hyper means over. Hyper means beyond. So when Einstein speaks about the hyperspace, he's stating about a dimension that exists beyond the space that we can perceive here, and thus his concepts on relativity. He also speaks in terms of space and time is intimately associated with this fourth dimension of space. But it is not time as temporal time. That temporal time is the lapse that we see between one event and the next. It is not that time. It is time in terms of spatial time, where all of these events arrange themselves in a very logical sequence. And each one event, if you would, creates an image that is charged with vitality, with sensation, with emotion, with vivid imagery. This vital plane, being the fourth dimension, it not only superimposes the third dimension, but its properties are so similar to the ones that we have here in this third dimensional plane that we see interdimensional phenomena manifested so often. The fact that we may not hear about these things consistently does not mean that they do not exist, but we're sharing with you an example of these events as it happens 2, 3, maybe 4 times a year in the state of Yoro in Honduras. It is important that we say that this particular state of Yoro is roughly 200 kilometers from the coastline, so it is far away from bodies of water. But what happens here is that there are rain of fish. Literally, fish fall from the heavens. And when this happens, well, people take advantage and they satisfy all of their needs. And scientists have made their very best effort to explain why this happens. Because this is perhaps something that may be of your interest, we would let you go out and do your own investigation. But for the sakes of our conversation today, these reigns of animals, whether frogs or fish, they happen because there is an overlap between the third and the fourth dimension, and there is the ability to get a physical body from one into the next one. This vital or ethereal plane is what has been known forever as the Garden of Eden. This paradise of nature, this is the realm of all of the elemental creatures of nature. It is here where we find the gnomes and the pygmies of earth, the sylphs of air, the nereids and the undines of water. It is here where we find the salamanders of fire and even the punctus and barbellos of the ether. This is the land that has been identified many times before at those beautiful locations where there are flowing rivers of honey and milk. And they say honey and milk because it is like the language of myths and parables. It is to convey a deeper message. And when we hear honey and milk, it is saying that there is a sweet nourishment of gold, of that radiant light. The tree of life identifies this vital or ethereal plane as the foundation. And in Kabbalah, it is known as the sphere of Yesod. And as you can see in the tree of life, well, it exists one sphere, one octave above our plane. For us to be able to partake of this phenomena, we need to have a vital body. And we are so fortunate that our physical body is able to exist, to feel, perceive, because of the vital body and the ethers of the vital body itself. But beyond this vital plane, there is the astral plane. And here we find the beginning of the fifth dimension of nature. In this astral plane, we have two regions. We have a region that is superior, and we have a region that is inferior. And the difference between them, if we look at this from an energy perspective, is that one region vibrates at a higher frequency than another. For us to be able to move and exist within the astral plane, we need to have an astral body. And today, we have an astral body that works well for us to be able to partake of the events in the astral plane. But this astral body that we have is still not good enough for us to remain there as citizens of that particular state. You see, because our astral body today is more of a lunar nature. It is through the intense work that we can bring in transmuting our creative energies, in working to fabricate, crystallize, and awaken the igneous faculties of this superior body, that we can crystallize a solar body, a radiant soul that can exist immortal within this fifth dimension of nature. This astral plane is also known as the region where we project our desires. And in Hindi, well, the authors refer to it as the kamas. This realm is also known as the sidereal world. So if you have come to know this with experience in other doctrines, every time that they speak about the sidereal body, they're speaking about the astral body. This particular sphere is known in the Tree of Life as the sphere of Hod, and Hod means splendor. And we should not be surprised by it being splendor, because it is in the astral plane where we can have contact with the devas of nature, with great masters, illuminated beings that can guide us and teach us. This astral plane is ruled by the moon, and it is Archangel Gabriel, the ruler of the moon. And what this suggests is that for us to unfold in our astral body, we take better benefit when we attempt to do it in a full moon with all the strength of the moon, than when we are on a waning or in a new moon. Some of the devas that exist here in this astral plane, well, we can find the representations of the elemental gods of earth and water and air and fire. And depending on where we find ourselves in the world, these would have different names. They would be presented different, but the differences are simply to satisfy the needs and the idiosyncrasies of the people who are receiving the wisdom. Here, just for us to expand our culture, we can see Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, which is a god that Samael mentions time and time again when he speaks about the mysteries of the magic of love. There is also Neptune as the Roman god of water, that we can see him always carrying his trident. And in the Greek tradition, well, the god of the wind is seen as four distinct manifestations, as one god for each one of the four winds. And thus we see Aeolus and Boreas and Zephyrus and Anemoi. But if we were looking at the Aztec tradition, then we would be seeing Hecatl as the god of wind. And when it comes to the goddess of the earth, in the Aztec tradition, we see Coatlicue. And among the Greeks, we see Gaia, which is a name that for certain all of you have heard before. It is here in this astral plane, in this fifth dimension of nature, where we can penetrate with our soul. And it is in this particular dimension where we experience all of our dreams. Dreams are astral experiences. And some people may say, yeah, it's been years since the last time that I dreamt. But in reality, what we should be saying, it has been years since the last time that I remembered one of my dreams. Because everyone unfolds. It does not matter your religion, your sex, your body shape, your body size. None of that matters. Every time the physical body goes to sleep, the soul leaves the body while remaining attached to it. And it does so that the body, the vital body itself, can take care of regenerating, recovering, all of the functions and the faculties of the physical body, and restore the damage and the wear that we have induced during the day. It is here in this astral plane where we can unfold consciously, and we can have an opportunity to learn directly, not only from the masters, but by direct experience, contemplating the actions of our own psychological aggregates. An octave higher than the astral plane, well, we find the mental plane. And the mental plane and the astral plane, they both find themselves in the fifth dimension of nature. It is just that the mental plane vibrates an octave higher than the astral plane. And for us to move and exist within the astral plane, we need to create a mental body. Now, the mental body is a property of great masters. We, in our current situation, well, we have an astral body, and within it we have all of our desires, as much as our mind and our willpower and all of our impulses. They're there. For us to move and exist within this realm, we also have to fabricate this body. And we have the opportunity to do that by working in that flaming forge of Vulcan. Here, this sphere is known in the Tree of Life as Netzah. And the previous sphere, Hod, is splendor. Netzah means victory. This realm is ruled by Archangel Raphael. Raphael is the wisdom of God. And because Raphael rules the mental plane, he has the faculty as a master of medicine to help us heal the mind. Samael gives us a mantra that we can use to heal our mind. Sometimes we go through so many adversities. We are under so many influences that are constantly pounding in our thoughts. Problems that we carry for days or weeks or months. And those mental afflictions, well, they have an effect in our emotions. They have an effect in our vitality, and they have an effect in our physical body. And we can always bring healing into the mental body by chanting the mantra, Hom. That mantra, for those of you who would be interested in practicing it, it sounds quite like this. Hom. Allow yourself to relax your body. And as you do this within the privacy of your own solitude, chant this mantra over and over again. Invoke through your innermost the help of Archangel Raphael as a master of medicine, and beg with your soul, with your heart, to bring healing into your mind. It is important that we do this. It is important that we have a healthy mind. We see this in the writings of the Bhagavad Gita, as it states, the mind that abandons itself to the wandering senses, it leaves the soul as helpless as the raft that is swept away by waves during a hurricane. We need to have a mind that is calm and receptive, a mind that is healthy, and we need to bring in some degree of mental hygiene, because the natural state of the mind suggests that the mind is feminine. The mind is meant to receive. It expresses all of the feminine attributes of nature. So the mind is compassionate. The mind in its pure state is serene. But in our current state, our mind is brutal. It is full of lies. It is affected by our gregarious conduct. It is impacted by all of those times that we have felt betrayed, defeated. Our mind, for all practical purposes, is not a serene, calm lake. It is more of a raging sea. And for us to start inducing some calmness, some good hygiene into the mind, well, we have to start avoiding pornography. We have to start avoiding horror movies. We have to avoid violence, because all of these things, they later crystallize as wounds of the mind. Beyond the mental plane, there is the plane of causation, or the causal plane. By this time, we have walked into the sixth dimension of nature. And of course, this vibrates at an octave higher than what happens in the mental plane. Here in the causal plane, we find all the causes of all that exists, including the causes behind all our experiences. And everything that happens, everything that manifests, emerges as a spark of action from this realm of nature. This particular kingdom, this realm, is the realm of art and music and family and beauty and love. This is the realm of willpower. It is here where we see the manifestation of the human soul of the innermost. Our Father who is in secret is a divine trinity. It is Atman, it is Buddhi, and it is Manas. And Manas means human soul. Our consciousness is just a projection of that human soul of the innermost. It is like a spark that escapes a big bonfire. And our consciousness is the one thing that we have incarnated today from the innermost. As the innermost unfolds itself, what that means, as he exposes itself to view, as he uncovers, as he unveils himself, well, there are three distinct manifestations. And here the human soul is what has enabled us to be here today, because that magnetic center is active and it is seeking of the wisdom of the innermost. For us to exist in this causal plane, we would need to have a causal body, and that is a body that would have to be fabricated after we have fabricated a mental one. So for the purposes of today, as you look at the tree of life, right here at the very center of the tree where we would find a representation of the heart, we see the sphere of Tiferet, that means beauty. And this particular sphere, this realm, is ruled by Archangel Uriel. Beyond this, we have then the realm of the spiritual soul. And the realm of the spiritual soul is the illuminated spiritual soul of the innermost. This is known as Buddhi, and it also exists within the sixth dimension of nature. Here, we find the rigor and the severity of the law applied to the innermost. What this means is that karma applies here in this sphere, and it trickles down the tree of life to the moment in which we experience it here. It is applied here to the consciousness, so that karma can then truly be an effective law of nature. Karma just doesn't apply in the physical plane. It manifests itself. It manifests itself within this sixth dimension. It manifests itself within the sixth dimension, and then by virtue of the flow of the ray of creation, we experience all of its consequences. We would need to have a Buddhic body to exist here. And when it comes to the tree of life, well, this sphere is known as Gebura, which means severity. And of course, this sphere is ruled by the sun. In this image, we're showing you something that may throw some of you off. And what we see here is a representation of the spiritual soul in the form of Pamina. Pamina is this woman dressed in white, holding onto a dagger, while she is subdued by the queen of the night. We could say perhaps the dark moon. Here is where we find the beautiful artistic expression of the path of initiation and the dynamics of the human soul and the spiritual soul and the innermost in a great work that was created by Amadeus Mozart. This story of the spiritual soul is a story that is known to us. And we have seen it many times before in many folk tales and perhaps in many movies that we enjoyed as children. And one of those examples, we see it here as part of the Sleeping Beauty. Here in this drama are hidden many of the mysteries of Gnosis. And maybe it is not immediately evident for you, but if you allow us, we can show you what all of these things mean. Because here we see this very courageous man, this warrior, who is indeed a representation of the innermost. We see him shielded with a shield of wisdom, and he is, of course, carrying a powerful sword that allows him to break through the thorny bushes and go fight that demon, that black dragon. That sword is indeed a symbol of the creative power. We see that it is riding on a white horse, a horse that represents many things. It can mean good friends, it can mean superior bodies, it can mean laws, faculties, attributes, abilities of the innermost. We see that he is always walking through a narrow path where there are dangers on either side, because that is the path of initiation. And all of those thorns and all of those bushes, they are a symbol of the willpower that is necessary to be invested in the work. Of course, he is fighting the many faces of the ego, and the fire from that dragon is just temptations, adversities, the challenges that we must face. But as he becomes triumphant, as he defeats the dragon with the sword, the innermost is able then to fuse together with the spiritual soul and awaken it. So we find all of these symbols digested and presented to us in many different ways. Speaking of the innermost, when we walk into this particular space, we are but a step away from the realm of the Divine Trinity, what we know as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And here we see the innermost represented as Arjuna. Notice that Arjuna is to the left, and he is being led by Krishna, or the Christ. They're both playing a conch. As they blow through it, this is a sound of war. It is also a symbol. In this case, as they are drinking from the source of wisdom of the waters. By the time that we walk into this realm of the innermost, we are in the seventh dimension of nature. Here, what we see is a true reality. This is the realm of mathematics, where when we see things, we're not seeing the appearance of the thing. We are seeing what exists below, beyond, between, behind, above, on the sides of it. We can see the constitution of it, the forces that apply to it. Everything becomes immediately tangible. This realm is the realm of the divine universal spirit, and that is our source. This is the origin of our true reality. Our innermost is the warrior. This is why we see Arjuna, this is why we see him in a chariot of gold getting ready to go and fight that multitude. But today, this is not us. Today, we are the shadow of our innermost. All of the splendor of the innermost is blocked and cannot manifest in us, simply because of the barriers of our mind. For us to exist in this realm, we would need, to have the body of Atman, and that requires some work. But for our purposes, as we speak of this sphere and the tree of life, this is called Chesed, and the human soul exists, the spiritual soul exists within the realm of severity, and the innermost exists within the realm of mercy. Notice that this sphere is ruled by Archangel Samael, who is the logos, the solar logos of Mars. So now that we have a good feel for 7 dimensions and the 7 bodies, well, we know that we are looking at dreams, and we know that we're speaking about the astral plane, the astral body, and just going from here in this 3rd dimension with our vitality, leaving it in the body, and penetrating into the 5th dimension of nature. So what exactly are dreams? Perhaps the answer has been written in the book of Job in chapter 33, when Job writes, "For God speaks time and time again, but a person may not notice it. In a dream, a vision in the night, when deep sleep comes over people as they slumber on their beds, he uncovers their ears and terrifies them with warnings." Terrifies seems like a very strong word. Perhaps we could have said awes them with warnings, awes them with wisdom and direction. But this is what dreams are. It is the way in which our innermost, El, which means God, speaks to us while we are asleep. And it is important that we know that not all dreams are of a transcendental nature. Not all dreams are prophetic dreams, and not all dreams are coming from the lateral octave of the sun. Some of our dreams are associated to our desires. There are many dreams that emerge from our subconsciousness. There are other dreams that project themselves from the 5 cylinders of the human machine. They could be intellectual or emotional. They could be based on the effects in the motor center. They could be very confusing dreams because they emerge from the instinctual center of the machine, or they could be sexual dreams. But even though not all dreams are of a transcendental nature, some dreams emerge from the internal world. Look, when we have dreams that are based on desires, these are all dreams that are based on the projections of the ego. Usually, what happens during the day repeats itself at night. And if during the day we have been moving in an environment that is very aggressive, our dreams will tend to reflect a degree of aggressiveness. If during the day we are going with our desires that are more of a carnal nature, well, our dreams at night are going to reflect that. And what is important about these dreams based on desires, because we have to consider them important, is that they reflect our emotional and our psychological state. When we can see these dreams, we get a better feel on where is it that we stand emotionally and psychologically. There are also dreams that are based on our interior world and dreams that are as much as in the exterior world. These dreams are characterized because we are always the main character. We are the person of focus. Everything revolves around that aspect that we call I. And because the inner psychological city resembles the external, the things that we see on the outside will appear on those dreams as well. So we may find ourselves partaking in bars or in movie theaters. We could find ourselves playing at the same basketball court or at the same park. We will see this. But these dreams are a reflection of the many places that we visit during the day. But the thing is that in our current state of slumber, well, we just underestimate the importance of all these places that we visit. But these are the dreams that are based on our interior. Then there are dreams that are based on what is hidden within the subconscious. These are things that we have stuffed, things that we have deliberately hidden because there may be inferior emotions of shame and inadequacy. These are things that we may have even forgotten, things that we may have spliced and compartmentalized, or simply things that we have just considered irrelevant and yet have had an effect in us. So during the day, we could be triggered by food, by people, by clothing, by the experiences of others, by the tragedies that we notice next door. But because we have forgotten, the brain still notices the effect of those memories, even though consciously we are not there enough to be able to perceive them. So these dreams that are based on what is hidden in the subconscious, they are exceedingly important as well, because they reveal unsuspected realities of self. And then there are the dreams associated to the 7 centers. Nobody would explain it better than Master Samael, and that is why we are quoting his words here. He says, there are intellectual dreams and emotional dreams, and there are also dreams that belong to the motor center, and sexual dreams that are exclusively related to sexual activities. These dreams reflects situations experienced during the day. It is a repetition of daily activities. If a person lives on the floor of emotions, his dreams reflect situations of terror, of madness. If he lives on the sexual floor, his dreams will be lustful, of adultery, fornication, masturbation. If dreams belong to the instinctual center, then reflections are manifested in dreams so incoherent, so submerged, that it becomes very difficult to understand such dreams. So as you observe your dreams, now you know that when you come across one of those dreams, that it is so difficult to make heads and tails of it. These are dreams that are very likely coming from that instinctual center. They're still important. We still need to gather those symbols. Something is being communicated to us. But at least now we know from where this one is coming. Same thing with the sexual ones. Same things with the emotional, with the intellectual dreams. And then there are superior dreams. These are dreams that emerge from the ray of creation. These dreams are dreams that emerge from the lateral octave of the sun. What this means is that these are messages that come to us directly from our real being, the Father or our Father, or messages that come to us from our being directly from the spiritual soul. There are only a few dreams that descend from the most elevated regions. And from the most elevated regions, we see there the three aspects of the Absolute, where God is unmanifested, where God is manifested, and where we see the expression of God as the spiritual Son. These dreams will characterize themselves because they are very impactful, but they are also very organized. They are very sequenced. They are very meaningful dreams. These are all practical teachings that we can put to use, and this is wisdom that comes to us from our buddhi, the spiritual soul of the innermost. But the thing is that the language of dreams is comparable to myths and legends. It is kind of a parable where people, actions, and objects, they are not literal. These are all specific representations from our inner worlds and representations of our thoughts, representations that are also of our sentiments. In the book of Daniel, there is a narrative on King Nebuchadnezzar and the prophet Daniel itself. The king had been experiencing a dream that was recurrent and was constantly hammering him at night, and it was inducing some degree of internal trouble. So it says, in his second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams that troubled him, and sleep deserted him. So the king gave orders to summon the magicians, the mediums, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. He wanted them to tell him his dream without him telling them what the dream was. And when they came and stood before the king, he said unto them, I had a dream, and I am anxious to understand it. Those who attempted and failed, well, maybe they had been given the consideration of powers that they did not have. Many of those magicians and mediums and sorcerers perished. They were killed because they were unable to explain the dream and its meaning. But then the prophet Daniel had the opportunity. And as he shows up, he says, Your Majesty, as you were watching, suddenly a colossal statue appeared. That statue, tall and dazzling, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was terrifying. The head of the statue was pure gold. Its chest and arms were silver. Its stomach and thighs were bronze, and legs were iron. And its feet were partly iron and partly fired clay. Of course, the prophet Daniel continues and explains the meaning of the dream. But the key message here is that Daniel, being able to connect with his innermost, was able to retrieve the vivid details that our internal God communicates in dreams. And of course, Daniel as a prophet was honored. There is another beautiful dream that has to do with the foundation of Mexico. And as the people were being walked with under the leadership of their priests, after much traveling and many ordeals, The left-handed hummingbird, Huitzilopochtli, a representation of our inner God, appeared to one of the priests who happened to be named Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl means serpent eagle. And Huitzilopochtli spoke to the priest and told him, "You must find a cactus growing from a rock upon which an eagle would be devouring a serpent." And Quetzalcoatl told this to his people. And as they continued walking, they found this on a lake. And on the lake, there was a small island. And on the island, there was a rock. And from the rock, there was a cactus that was emerging. And on that cactus, there was an eagle that was devouring a snake. And this is where Mexico was founded. For those of you who do not know, Mexico means the city in the middle of the lake of the moon. So notice the difference between this dream and the dream of Daniel. One dream is entirely symbolic. The other one is giving clear and concise direction. One of them is coming from the innermost. The other one is coming from a lateral octave of the sun, from directly the ray of creation. And this is why we have to learn to interpret our dreams, so that we can distinguish when is it that we can indeed take certain things and apply them as such. Because when it comes to the interpretation of dreams, we need to decipher our dreams using 4 fundamental laws. The key message here is that interpretations do not apply the same to everyone. What means something to yours truly would mean something completely different to you based on your own life experience. And the 4 laws that we must apply to decipher our dreams are the law of opposites, of analogies, of correspondences, and the law of number. When we speak of the law of analogies, when we say analogies, we want you to set your mindset into likeness. Things that look alike, things that are very similar. For example, raindrops are analogous to tears. So in a dream, if you see rain, that is an indication that you may be up for some suffering and pain in the upcoming days. If you see, for example, the face of a raging bull, well, that raging bull is analogous to our face when we are angry. So when you see a raging bull, you know that there are some events in which you're going to have to apply everything that you have learned to subdue and dominate that beast. If you see a turtle, well, a turtle is analogous to lethargy, slowness, in some cases, laziness. If you see a pig, well, a pig is analogous to filth. And that could be associated with a dirty mind, with dirty actions. But the thing is, even though these analogies state this, they may mean something different based on your own life experience. Because if you're a farmer, raindrops would be an indication of fertility, of growth, of success. If you are part of the culture of the Maya, well, the Maya see the turtle as a symbol of the universe. So a turtle would perhaps speak in terms of self-realization. It would speak in terms of achievements of the innermost. So every interpretation must be based on our life. And not only on our life, we must learn to perceive from the innermost, because our intuition should confirm it. This is how we apply analogies. Then there is correspondence. Analogies, it is similar to it, is like that, but correspondence stands for resemblance. There are transcendental teachings or some conditions in our life that would require of our innermost to share with us certain symbols. For example, there would be a situation in this made-up example where a woman is dreaming that her husband is cheating. And if she is unable to apply these laws and she takes that dream literal, well, the moment that she wakes up, she may hurt the husband. She may kick him out of the house and create problems that are completely unnecessary. When in reality, the dream was reflecting to her an aspect of herself. Something that could have to do with loyalty, or perhaps betrayals, or perhaps lust. In terms of correspondence, if you happen to see something like an automobile, a bicycle, or a horse, well, these, from the perspective of them being vehicles, they could indicate the physical body. But if you also see a house or a building could be a symbol of the physical body, because then that would be the residence of the soul. And for us to apply the law of correspondence, well, we need to be a little bit more keen and be able to embrace the principle of spontaneity to understand what the animals is saying. Some examples, well, if you're driving a car and the car breaks down, well, that may indicate that if the car is a symbol of the physical body, that you may become sick later, and you need to be careful. If you're riding your bike and you fall, well, it may warn of an accident, but it may also warn about a spiritual imbalance. If you see a broken down house, it may indicate that your condition right now is a little poor and that things must change. And then there is the law of opposites. Opposites typically associated to our emotions and associated to our internal state. If you are in a dream and you see yourself dancing, that is suggesting that you're going to be dealing with difficult times ahead. If you see yourself eating candy, that may indicate that as the days come along, you have to be expecting some sourness. If you see yourself laughing, that is indicating that you may be crying later. If you see yourself in fear in a dream, that may be a message from the animals telling you that you need to exercise courageous, heroic action. If you see yourself, this is an example that we learned very recently, and we personally find it beautiful. If you see yourself receiving a sword and jewels and a crown from some kind of venerable master, and yet you know that you are lustful, that you lie, that you're angry, you're impatient, you don't demonstrate love, you're ambitious, you know that you're fanatical, then we cannot just take that we are receiving initiations in the inner planes when we're still carrying all of these inferior aspects within. This is reflecting what could be out there for us if we make a change, and we have to acknowledge how poor our spiritual life may be today. And the last thing that we would like to cover is the law of numbers. So in the next slides, we will show you numbers 1 through 9 in the book, The Mysteries of the Dream State, of our Christmas message, 2021-22. We will explain in detail the numbers 1 through 22. But in the interest of time, we wanted to give you these. If you see anything that represents the number 1 in your dream, well, this is indicating that you have the capacity to receive this wisdom. It is inviting you to work with your original ideas. It is inviting you to develop your willpower. If you see the number 2, the number 2 is associated to the inner Christ, the force of love. It is telling you need to learn to relate to others. It is explicit about relationships. You have to learn to listen to the ideas of others. You need to learn to interact. If you see the number 3, here, this is saying that number 3 as part of the law of the Triamashikamno, the law that creates. You can create favorable conditions, that the outcome of your work needs to be beautiful. It needs to be artistic, that your work needs to be exercised in harmony. This is inviting you to collaborate as well. If you see the number 4, it is inviting you to set a solid foundation for your work. So if you have a project in mind, if you have business deals, if you are working with your spouse in that super dynamic of love, you need to set a solid foundation for your work. And as part of that, you need to be merciful. You need to learn to forgive. And Samael says, there is no forgiveness without the elimination of the aggregates within. If you see the number 5, this speaks about teachings and learnings. And the number 5 is very emphatic about saying you need to learn to find the good and the bad in things. That means you have to find what is favorable and what is unfavorable in everything you do. It is saying you cannot be mindless. Avoid thoughtlessness and be mindful in all of your actions. And this demands a tremendous amount of self-awareness and being present in the moment without remembrance of self. If you see the number 6, this is the lover of the tarot. So this will warn of erotic volitions. It will announce love-related matters. And if you're married, well, it will indicate that there will be some situations with your spouse. The number 6 indicates victory and good luck, but only if you are defined, if you are decided. The number 7, even though it is called triumph in this arcanum, it indicates possible triumph. Possible because this is a victory, a triumph that requires of much effort and of a lot of tenacity. You need to overcome difficulties. You need to overcome pain. You need to overcome sufferings. And when you do that and you learn how to suffer, then the triumph emerges. Number 7 may also indicate payments. When we see the number 8 is the number of Job. So this number is telling us that we must strive for what is right. We must strive for the truth regardless of consequence. The number 8 indicates sufferings that could be because of karma, or indicates sufferings that will strengthen you. So if you see a number 8, there should be no fear. It is inviting for us to have patience and serenity and to be truthful. And when we find the number 9 is inviting you to improve your condition. It is inviting you to increase your kindness, to be generous, to work individually. The number 2, the number 3, they were asking of you to relate. Number 9 is inviting of you to work individually, and it's inviting you to abandon your defects. So here we have the meanings of the numbers 1 through 9. For those of you who would like to take a quick screenshot, again, the full explanation between 1 and 22 we will provide to you in this book. And now let's talk about the symbols in dreams. Friends, we're going to share with you only a partial list. The whole list will be available in our book, and we certainly do this because it is just too much to share. So if you're in a dream and you happen to see a dog in your dream, if the dog is attacking you, that is an indication that some friend may attack you. If a dog is biting you, that is an indication that you need to anticipate potential harm. But if you happen to be with a gentle dog, it is speaking about friendship. Dogs are usually associated with close friends. If you see a lion in your dream and your lion is attacking you, or if you see a wolf dog that is attacking you, that is an indication as a representation of the law that karma must be paid. If you see a gentle lion, that means that karma is in your favor. The divine law is in your favor. If you happen to see a wedding, a manifestation of matrimony in your dream, well, that could be an indication that there are some achievements of the being. If you see a tree, and the tree is split in two, that means that someone will fall, but they may rise again. But if you see a tree that has been uprooted, a tree as a symbol of the tree of life, that means that someone will fall, but they will not rise. It invites us to revisit our actions, to revisit the quality of our internal work. If you see a serpent in your dreams, and this serpent is attacking a woman, well, the serpent is associated with the fire of Kundalini. It is also associated with the Kunda buffer organ. So if the serpent is attacking a woman, that is poor quality in the work of sexual transmutation. That means that those energies are not being sent through the right channels to where they should go, and that the energy is being used incorrectly somewhere else. But if we see a gentle serpent, that would be reflecting us good quality of work in our sexual transmutation. Now, sometimes you may see a corpse, a cadaver, in your dream. So the fact that we see these things, remember that the law of opposites applies. So if you see yourself dead, it may be indicating favorable changes. It may be indicating the death of some psychological aggregate, and it should be taken as good news. If you see yourself taking a bath in pure waters, that indicates of good health. If you see yourself taking a bath or dipping in a pool, that is an indication of work that must be done with sexual transmutation. Now, we spoke earlier of a feline as a lion, but now if you see a cat in your dream, if a cat is attacking you, that means that there is some betrayal from your spouse or betrayal from close friends. And receiving news like this is very appropriate because it allows you to anticipate certain circumstances and prepare you to not react, to not place objections, but to approach things in a way where you can be calm and receptive. If you see an airplane in your dream, that speaks of spiritual progress. If you see fish in your dream and you see yourself fishing, that speaks of the apostolate. If you're fishing, apologies for that. If you see yourself fishing and the fish are alive, that speaks of physical vitality, which is always good news. If you see yourself murdering people in your dreams, that is an indication of work that is being done to eliminate psychological aggregates. And if in your dream you happen yourself contemplating the stars at night, that is giving you an indication that there is divine intelligence working in your favor. Let's remember that these stars are not just dots of light. These are constellations, solar systems, suns, other planets that are roaming the universe, each one of them endowed with its own consciousness. And as you contemplate them, they are contemplating back at you. So this is divine intelligence working in your favor. If you happen to see old sisters, well, this is associated with gossip and calumnies that could be about you or reflecting the ones that you have shared about others when perhaps you shouldn't have. If you see a path and it is a bad road, that means that you should anticipate problems on your path of initiation, on your spiritual path. But if you see a path that is adorned with flowers, that means that you have a good path ahead, that there is a good reward. Speaking of flowers, if you see yourself planting seeds, that is inviting of you to continue the work or to start the work of sexual transmutation. But if you're planting flowers, you're conquering virtues. Those attributes, virtues, faculties, powers of the being are starting to make themselves accessible and available to you. And if you're harvesting, well, then that means that your work and its achievements are paying off. If in your dream you're contemplating the sun, you're contemplating the innermost. If what you see is the moon, what you're contemplating is your defects or your psychological aggregates. If in your dream you're either too hot or too cold, that indicates desperations, it indicates problems. If in your dream you see yourself falling into an abyss, that is a sexual fall. So we must be very watchful, mindful of what we are doing with our creative energies. If you see yourself swimming upstream, that is an indication of a battle against passions. Notice that here you are fighting the flow of the waters. So those raging waters are our inferior aspects. And if you see yourself flying, those are achievements of the being itself. If in the dream you happen to see a scale, well, it depends. Because if the scale is tilted to the right, that means that it's favorable. The scale is always a representation of the law of karma. So that karma is favorable. There is a good reward. But if it is inclined to the left, it is suggesting that we must pay. And if we don't, suffering is going to come. If we see a rainbow, the rainbow will speak of allegiances, good friendships, good partnerships that will come and help enable the work. If you see birds in your dreams, for example, a swallow, that means that there is help available for the problems that you have been facing, the challenges that you must be enduring. If you see excrement in your dream, this one is a little tricky. Excrement means that there is a financial support that becomes available. And let us explain this just for a second. Because we know that excrement by itself is something that we can consider filthy. But when excrement is put to good use as manure, we can use it to fertilize the fields. It is thanks to this excrement that we can see seeds sprouting, that we can see healthy fruit, that we can see beautiful harvests. And in that light, that is the meaning of excrement as a financial support. In ancient times, the economies were ruled by the amount of seeds that people were able to contain and carry. But times have changed. And now, because we're not speaking of harvesting and seeds, well, we speak in terms of that other type of condensed energy, which is currency. If you see yourself in a desert, it may suggest losses. It may indicate work in the path of initiation. And if you see yourself dreaming in your dream, that means that we have to pay more attention to the mind. We need to bring the mind back so that the mind is not constantly wandering, and remind the mind that it is an instrument at the service of the consciousness and the innermost. If you see a stork, that is great news. That means that there has been an internal birth of faculties, virtues, powers, abilities. And if you see an elephant is indicating that the consciousness is about to awaken. If you see colors in your dream, well, the color yellow indicates work with the Christ. If you see the color green, it speaks of hope, white, of purity. And if you see dark colors, like dark colors or black, well, that's maximum negativity. That speaks of mediocrity. It is inviting whatever is colored with that to be improved, to be fixed. If you see the color purple, purple is maximum spirituality, and blue is always the color of love. If in your dreams you're enjoying the dew of the morning, you notice this dew everywhere, that is indicating spiritual peace. So let's leave the symbols to that. Hopefully you were able to capture some. And again, the whole list of symbols will be made available to you in this book that we will make available for you to download free of charge. Now let's speak about awakening consciousness in our dreams. Samael tells us, if we want to achieve the awakening of consciousness into self-consciousness, we must work with the consciousness here and now. It is precisely here in this physical world where we must work to awaken consciousness. Whoever awakens here awakens everywhere in all dimensions of nature. And he tells this to us in the esoteric treatise on Hermetic astrology. When it comes to awaken the consciousness, the work has to be here and now. And our daily life, the situations that we experience at home, what we experience at work, with our neighbors in the community, that is the best gymnasium that we can experience to see ourselves reflected in others. In the Holy Scriptures, it speaks about the need to awaken, and the need to awaken here and now. In the book of Romans, it says, besides this, since you know the time, it is already the hour for you to wake up from the sleep, because now our salvation is nearer than when we first believed. And in Psalms, it states, wake up, my soul, wake up, harp and lyre. I will wake up the dawn, the sunrise, the arrival of the innermost. On this topic of awakening the consciousness, Samael gives us also some techniques, and we will expand a little bit on those. But the Master says, first, we must first sincerely convince ourselves that we are asleep. When one accepts that he is asleep, it is a sign that he wants to wake up. Observe, in the madhouses, Samael says, men who are almost ready to leave accept that they are mad. And that is precisely the unequivocal sign that they are already improving. The same happens with people whose conscience is asleep. They do not accept that they are asleep, but when they accept it, it is an unequivocal sign that they want to wake up, that they are beginning to wake up. And in here, what Master is telling us is, if we are thinking that we're awake, if we are thinking that we are partially awake and throwing conditions and attributes around our awakeness, it is going to become very difficult. Because it is the same as looking at that one person who thinks that they know everything that there is to know about any given matter. They have effectively closed the door to the opportunity of learning something new. And so we must sincerely convince ourselves that we are asleep. What happens in this dynamic on sleepness is that there is a specific failure point that drives the sleep of consciousness. When we receive an external impression, whether we see something or someone, and we identify with it. When we receive something through our senses, a sound, a smell, a taste, and we identify with it, we inevitably fall into the space of fascination. And once we fascinate with it, our mind drifts away and starts creating all of these fantasies around what we saw, what we heard, what we smelled, what we tasted, what we felt. And the moment that happens, we fall into the sleep of consciousness. So that means that we have to intercept the impression at the moment in which we perceive it. For us to be able to break away with the cycle of the sleep of consciousness, we need to be able to raise our consciousness to the level of our circumstances. That means that our consciousness needs to operate as a filter. So if we are impacted by the image of a beautiful person, we have to remember that that beauty is only temporal. It will pass, and eventually it's going to fade away. If we are identified with an ambition to earn this more money or have this new job or new position, well, we have to realize that though the prospect is there, if there are no other changes, we're going to fall back into our old habits that are reflected in the lack of satisfaction that we have today. So we need to be able to filter those impressions. Friends, as part of your dream experience, if you happen to dream that you are awake, we would like to offer some caution and show where the danger is. Because sometimes people see themselves in the dream state and they notice that there is an enough level of awareness for them to modulate and control the flow of the dream. However, some of us will do that and remain bound to the drama of the dream itself. So if you're dreaming that you are awake, notice that there is the potential for you to start believing that you were born with some occult faculties and some esoteric degrees. In some cases, there are people who openly state, I have been entrusted with this mission and I have to do this and I have to do that. We need to be very careful because there are patterns of thought that lead us into starting to thinking, well, if I am like this, I just have a few months of work left. And then we start forgetting that awakening is a life purpose. Based on what we have learned in the Tree of Life, not only we need to go through a substantial transformation to make a change from one realm unto the next, to fabricate the necessary vehicles, awaken its faculties, gain the mastery that is necessary. But as that work is completed, there are practitioners that become adepts. There are adepts that become masters of perfection. There are masters of perfection that become perfect masters. There are perfect masters that fuse themselves with the unmanifested. So the awakening is indeed a life purpose. And the awakening expresses itself in many different degrees. But we tend to be impatient. And some people would seek artificial, synthetic, or natural drugs. And we would like to let you know that no drug is going to result in an awakened consciousness. Any artificial state of consciousness, heightened state of consciousness that you generate artificially is short-lived, and it will generate for you more conflicts and more suffering in the long run. Friends, we also have to be very aware of our psychological associations. Because psychological associations have a direct effect during the day, and then they are repeated at night in the dream state. This means that if we find ourselves judging and gossiping during the day, we are inevitably going to carry those elements into our astral experience. And instead of having an opportunity to use that astral experience for something constructive, the same identification and fascination that we experienced in the day is going to be carried in the dream state, and our sleep experience is going to be not that beneficial. We need to be able to bring our consciousness forth. We need to stand ourselves at the center of that circle of Tao, a center that everywhere you look into that circumference, you will find one thing and its opposite on the other side, so that you can learn to start reconciling the experiences, the impressions that you receive. And we also need to learn to embrace a superior alternative. When it comes to psychological associations, instead of just going into gossip and the things that we tend to do, it would be better if, as a superior alternative, we would enjoy art. If we would enjoy and speak about what we are gathering from sacred writings, from good classical music. Remember, what we do during the day repeats itself at night in the dream state. And when it comes to discernment, well, we need to allow the consciousness to interact with the innermost and perceive. But during the day, we also have to bring and empower that consciousness into everything that we do. So we have to ask ourselves, am I in my physical body? Am I in the astral plane? And these are questions that just should not be put out there and do nothing about them. We must answer these questions. And how do we do that? Well, when we are asking ourselves if we are in our physical body, if we are in the astral plane, to answer the question, we should try to just leap, just jump with the intent of floating. Because if you find yourself floating, you would realize that you're not in your physical body. But if you happen to think, well, if I jump, people are going to think that I'm crazy. What am I doing? We also have the opportunity of just grab your finger and pull it with the intent of stretching it. Because the astral plane is not governed by this law of gravity, but rather the law of levitation. And if you jump with the intent of floating, you will float. And if you pull your finger is going to stretch. And when you let go, it will come back to its natural size. So you have to make an effort to answer these questions. And the more you do it here, the better. Because when we create a habit in the physical plane, then we repeat the same actions in the astral plane. This is how we apply this key of discernment. And now let's talk about astral unfoldment. What is it that you can do to unfold consciously in your astral body? Well, by now, most of you have partaken of our many lectures in astral travel. And most of you have heard the 31 different keys that Samael has given us for us to unfold in our astral body. There is the mantra Faraon. Remember that mantra is a word of power. And every time we chant these mantras, notice that the mantra Faraon is emphasizing the vibration of the thymus gland and the heart center of the human being. Because astral travel is a faculty of the heart. Fa, ra, on. And when we chant this mantra, Master Samael is saying, use your imagination and your willpower. See yourself before the great temples, the great pyramids in Egypt, and see yourself there. And start walking, and you will unfold and be there. There's also the mantra, La Ras. Again, the A invites the vibration, not only of the chakras of the lungs, but of the thymus gland, that gland right there at the heart center. And the S invites the vibration of the sacred fire of our Divine Mother within. La, ra, s. There's also the mantra S that sounds just like that very gentle whistle. With the beauty that as you chant these mantras, as you get into the ebb and flow of your breathing and the singing, it brings unto you a deeper state of relaxation, harmony in the vibration of your magnetic centers that invites the conscious unfolding. There is the mantra Rusti, the letter U. The R allows for the vibration of the blood. And this is very important because the fire exists within our own blood. Our blood is magnetic electric. And the U invites for the vibration of that solar center that exists in our body, right in our solar plexus. The S invites the vibration of the fire of our Divine Mother. And the I As it is struck with the letter T, it invites the harmonious vibration of the centers in our head so that we can see the things, so we can see beyond the appearance of things. Rusti. And of course, we chant these mantras over and over again. There's the mantra Omnis Baum Igneos. And this is a long mantra, but a beautiful mantra to practice because it invites a substantial amount of relaxation and calmness, harmony within the body. Omnis Baum Ichne Os. There's the mantra Tairerere. Tairerere invites the vibration of the heart center and the magnetic centers of the head, but also emphasizes the vibration of the blood and specific the vibration of the larynx chakra, the one that gives you the faculty of the inner ear so that you can hear beyond what the ears of the flesh can perceive. Tairerere. Tairerere. And of course, there is imagination and willpower. Samael says, as you wake up in the morning, there are times in which you can connect back into that dream. See that dream vividly with your objective imagination. See yourself there, and you will be able to continue this dream. You will be able to connect and be there and continue with that astral experience. For us to unfold as well, there is the anahat sound. And this is like the sound of the cricket. Depending on your ray of creation, you may hear something different. Some friends who are from the Oriental ray of creation, what they listen to is the sound of a gong. There are many of us who perceive the sound of the cricket itself. Like those times when you are in a perfect silence and you hear the sound of that cricket vibrating very gently within the cells of your brain. This is a sound that you can modulate its intensity. Rise the volume or lower it. And as you are resting on your bed, if you focus on this anahat sound, as you can modulate that sound, there comes a moment in which the degree of relaxation is such that you can monitor the transition between your sleep state and the vigil state. And right there at that moment, you can simply stand up, jump with the intention of floating, and you will be able to unfold consciously in your astral body. But there is also an invocation that you can do, and you can invoke the help of your Divine Mother. And this prayer, we invite you to memorize it. I believe in God. I believe in my Divine Mother. I believe in white magic. Mother of mine, take me out of my body. You repeat this prayer over and over and over again. You are taxing that mind so that it does not wander off with its fantasies, so that it remains occupied in a service to the innermost. And as you invoke of the help of your Divine Mother, she will help you by taking you out of your physical body. But even with all of these practices, there are some of us who may require some healing. Whether Faraón, Laraz, Tairerere, we may try, and we may find that we are not unfolding. What is happening? Well, it means that we need to bring healing to those centers in the physical body that are responsible for us unfolding. And to restore the faculty to unfold, there are 3 mantras, in reality 4, that we can chant. Remember, astral unfoldment is a faculty of the heart. And it requires of us to start awakening consciousness to be able to unfold consciously. So we have to actively work in the elimination of our defects. But we also have to make sure that that heart center is vibrating harmoniously. And for that, we can chant the mantra O or the mantra Om. We are all familiar with those. But in some cases, we benefit as well from chanting the mantra Ephraim or the mantra Egipto. These mantras, they invite the vibration of the liver, because the liver is the foundation of the astral body. So when we chant the mantra Egipto, we enable the vibration of the creative larynx for the magical ear. The G allows for the vibration of the liver. The I, the chakras of the third eye, Ajna and Sahasrara, the pineal gland. And the O, as it is struck with the letter T, for the vibration of the heart. And then there is the mantra Ephraim. This one is a little bit more complex because it invites the vibration for the faculties of the inner ear, but it also invites the mantra H, which stimulates the atomic elementals of wind that exist within our own body. Those are responsible for movement, the ones that can help us get out of the bed. Ra, well, that clearly speaks of the god sun of the Egyptians. But we know that it is vibrating our blood and making our heart center vibrate. And Im not only brings vibration into the two chakras, main chakras of the head, but the letter M invites for the vibration of our creative waters, helping in that transmutation. And as we chant this, we bring healing, and eventually we will be able to unfold consciously in our astral body. And we have for you some recommendations. Please do not abuse of the mind. Abusing of the intellect extenuates the heart, and astral travel is a heart faculty. If you find yourself in an environment that is very mind challenging, we need to bring a balance into those three centers. That means if you dedicate a lot of effort into the use of your intellect, well, we need to do some exercise for the physical body, and we also need to listen to some good classical music for the emotional center as well. When we do that, we bring those three centers in balance. But if we're only demanding from the intellectual center, we are abusing of the heart too. And thus, unfolding in our astral body becomes difficult. If that happens, Master Samael tells us to meditate on the goddess Kakini, this goddess that exists within the temple of our own heart. And in our meditation, we should just focus our objective imagination into seeing dense forests, clouds, eagles flying, and within that jungle, eventually we will come across this temple, and in that temple, a throne of gold in which the goddess Kakini reigns. And we can ask for her help. The other recommendation that we have is that we need to practice respect and veneration. And in the times that we live, well, we find that respect is something that seems to be very seldom, and veneration very scarce. So we need to embrace what in the Buddhist tradition is known as that Buddha nature. We have to respect animals in all of their aspects, whether they are our pets or the insects that come in our home. And remember that there is a monad as part of that organism that is also working in its evolution. And we could be interrupting that flow because of our fears and because of our cruelty. We also have to respect and venerate our children, our spouse, our parents, our neighbors and friends. As part of recommendations, well, we invite you to practice retrospection before you go into sleep. And retrospection is very important because retrospection is what allows us to be conscious of the stuff that we did in the day. We just don't live it and forget it. We live it and relive it. And you have a very good experience with retrospection if you have social network, because everyone who has had social network has seen posts that they uploaded years ago, and when they see them now in a new light, they cringe and they say, did I really say that? That is like not good. So this is exactly the type of perspective what we need to bring into what we have done during the day. And of course, our recommendation is that you do not speak about your experiences. When you speak about your experiences, inadvertently you awaken sometimes greed, envy, jealousy in those who are listening. And remember, these are meant to be esoteric. They are meant to be private, occult, and they belong only to you. And now in our last part, as we are getting ready to close, we're going to speak on the topic of dream yoga. Yoga comes from a very Indo-European root word, yug, that means to join. So for all purposes, yoga and religion, religare, or to reunite, to bind, they mean the same thing. Dream yoga is the system through which we join or reunite with those visions that we receive in our sleep state. And we have some indications on how to create favorable conditions for your dream yoga practice. Make sure that your room is clean and that it is organized. Make sure that your room is well set, that your bed is clean and comfortable. Some of us may still have mattresses with box springs that make noise. That creates a problem because as we move around, the noise that comes from the mattress may take us out of that deep sleep and awaken us. And that creates interruptions in the practice of dream yoga. Your room, the invitation is that you add highlights of blue, red, and yellow, because those three primary colors are representations of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You can always bring good aromas into your room, particularly the perfume of your zodiac. So if you're a native of Aries, you can always use some myrrh. If you are a native of Libra, you can use some galbanum, and etc. When it comes to the imagery that you have in your room, if you have posters that are violent, that are sexual in nature, they will have a negative effect in your psyche. So try to have images of statues, gods, goddesses, works from Michelangelo, works from Da Vinci, music that's from the great masters. Because when you see these works, they invite inspiration into the superior centers of the human body. When it comes to the last meal of the day, try not to make it a meal that is too heavy. Make it light so that it does not induce the opening of chakras in the lower abdomen that would give you a fairly sour nightmare and difficult astral experience. It is always a good idea to practice some exercise during the day. Some of us have not much interest in exercise, but Samael gives us the Tibetan exercises of rejuvenation. And those are exercise enough to help us transmute some of our energies and keep the body active. When it comes to our electronic devices, it is a good idea to keep them turned off. Set them to silent so that you're not awakened constantly at night with messages that are arriving into your phone and notifications from news and other things. And when it comes to the posture, the invitation is that you align yourself with the magnetic north of the planet. If it is possible for you, set your bed in that direction. That way, not only you are aligned to the planet, but as you do, you start your dream yoga practice by resting comfortably on your back in that corpse posture. And as you invoke of your innermost and you chant your prayer to the Divine Mother, once you are done, you can then turn on your right side. Bring your knees to your chest. Rest your left arm on your left hip and your head comfortably on your right hand. And as you assume that lion posture, you can then drift comfortably into the sleep state. In this work, you always invoke your innermost and you ask your innermost to bring forth that aspect of itself that is an expert in dream yoga, which is Morpheus. And you can ask Morpheus to educate you in the symbols, in the mysteries of dreams. And if you can have some classical music in the background while you sleep, so much better, as it goes directly into your superior emotional center. And when you wake up, Just as you do retrospection before you go to sleep, do retrospection so that you can revisit what you experienced. And keep your Gnostic journal close by so that you can write down as much as you can recollect from your dream experience. Once you're done with that and you're ready to have breakfast, Samael recommends that we have a breakfast of acidic fruit, citrus, with some nuts and honey, because that gives us the right number of atoms that help us restore and strengthen the ability to remember and work with our memory. Friends, when we are working with the practice of dream yoga, as we are working to awaken our consciousness, we slowly and methodically go to the process of receiving and experiencing the 4 lights. The first light is known as the light of revelation. This light of revelation is granted to the consciousness by the innermost itself. And these are short bursts of experience. These short bursts come loaded with superior wisdom, transcendental knowledge that have a very deep and profound impact that you experience it deep in the level of your heart. But these are very short. And these are meant not only to fuel your path forward, but also to help build your faith and that you can create certainty in the work. Beyond that, there is the light of magnification. This is the process to which the consciousness grows. Here is the process in which you start seeing yourself being more conscious. Heightened awareness of the consciousness for a longer duration in the day, penetrating even deeper into your experiences as you revisit them. This is the light of magnification. And we can spend a big deal of our life enjoying the growth of this light of magnification. Because beyond this light, we have the light of immediate realization. This light is the light that is experienced by the adepts and the masters of perfection. This is the light of immediate realization that is experienced by the great masters. But then there is the light of deep inner illumination. This is the light that allows us to be radiant. And of course, this is the light of perfect masters like Quetzalcoatl, Buddha, Jesus, Hermes, etc. As we are working and we are experiencing those lights of revelation, let's not take those experiences lightly or for granted. Because the whole purpose of all of this work in awakening is to help us prepare ourselves for the arrival of the phenomena of death at the culmination of our lives. We need to be able to be awakened enough so that with the arrival of the ray of death, that we do not lose the experience, that we do not forget the teachings, that our memories are not reset into a clean slate once again. So that when we come back, by virtue of the law of return and the law of recurrence, that we can then be familiar with the experiences, that we can be familiar with the knowledge that has been integrated into the consciousness, so that we don't make the same mistakes again, so that we can continue building upon the law of fate, which is the application of those superior principles of the innermost, as the innermost guides us with our consciousness from one milestone and one level of being onto the next one. So, dear friends, this is what we wanted to share with you, and this has been our presentation on this Christmas message titled The Mysteries of the Dream State. Thank you. Thank you so much for partaking with us this year. Thank you very much for being with us here today in this Christmas Eve, and
may all beings be happy.
May all beings be happy. Thank you, everyone.